This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fanalysts Fantasy Football Podcast. Joining me today is our boy Andrew, my co-host on the Fan Report, and I'm Nick.
He is, sir.
This past week, I don't recall us having a very good one. It was off to a very, very rocky start.
I'm pretty sure I got second place in 3 straight FanDuel tournaments this week.
I'm just talking in regards to our picks of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Those were the 2 highlights, and they
if you want to recap, I have my picks.
let us down.
Week.
I think I do too.
Yeah, I mean, the Josh Allen pick actually turned out pretty well.
Josh Allen
for me,
pick turned out well.
Aaron Rodgers, that was a miss.
Yes.
I did the Aaron Rodgers Devontae Adams stack in 3 leagues.
It's not that he played poorly. It's that they just ran the football the whole game, which, I mean, going up against the Lions wasn't a bad move.
No.
I know we wanted that. Each week we're going to kick off with some news.
Yeah.
So Andrew, if you wanted to go ahead and take that away, please feel free.
The biggest news taking over week 2 of the football season is injuries, believe it or not. There have been...
I think that's what it was last week, too.
There have been a lot. We're talking Saquon Barkley, who now seems to be done for the year with a torn ACL. That's what, at least what the Giants fear is the issue there. Christian McCaffrey has an ankle injury. We do not know the severity of it yet. Raheem Mostert feared MCL sprain, according to Ian Rappaport. There's another big running back down. You also have guys like Drew Lock, who left the stadium in a sling after a shoulder injury. You have Tyrod Taylor with a chest injury, didn't even end up playing this week.
Justin Herbert time, baby.
Is there? And then even on the defensive end, I mean, not anything fancy related unless you play with IDPs, but like Nick Bosa done for the year like a torn ACL. So it was quite a week. Oh yeah, and forgot Jimmy Garoppolo also high ankle sprain. Cortland Sutton with a knee injury.
Right.
I mean,
I think Paris Campbell, didn't he also get injured as well?
He got carted off. Yeah.
How about them Bosa boys and not being able to stay healthy in their rookie year?
Yeah, man. What in the world?
Obviously, it's a big week for injuries to some big name players. If obviously those guys are, I mean, McCaffrey, Barkley, those are probably your top 2 picks in most leagues. So their owners are probably scrambling, especially the Barkley owners. Maybe the McCaffrey owners can hold off a couple of weeks until he comes back, if he even misses time.
Yeah.
In the Mostert owners as well. I mean, what if you're an owner of one of those 3 guys, especially the top 2? What do you do here, or is your season just done? And if you're in a keeper league, maybe start planning for keepers.
I mean, you gotta hope that you drafted for depth if you had one of those guys. I mean, if you're someone who had, like, let's say Saquon Barkley, and then you're like, all right, I'm set at running back. Let me just grab a flyer for an RB2, and then we're just gonna tackle wide receiver the rest of the way. Yeah, your season's probably over unless you basically, like, what I always do, because you can never predict injuries in fantasy football, and I always anticipate, like, having a big player being hurt, and like all you can do is, if you don't already have a viable backup option, you need to save that waiver. Don't use your waiver on something that on a spot start. All right, you need to build up that waiver. Try to get yourself as close to the top of the waiver wire as possible, because one of these weeks someone's gonna pop that obviously won't be like pop that will fully replace Saquon Barkley, but someone's going to pop that could be an RB2 the rest of the way, for example. So the best advice I can give, if you don't already have the depth at the position, is to build up your waiver.
The problem with a lot of the teams, the owners, though, that did draft guys,
unless you're in auction,
right? That's different. But the problem with a lot of the owners that drafted guys like Saquon Barkley, and obviously this is going to be different depending on what your league's rules are for waiver. But normally, if you draft number 1 overall, you immediately have the last waiver spot available to you starting the following week.
Yeah, so you got to hope they didn't burn your waivers already in the first 2 weeks, hopefully.
Right. You got to hope that you didn't either, you got to hope that teams went after some waiver pickups to move you up, or if your league resets each week, that may just be a moot point. But you're already starting behind the ball here. You're not only did you lose your number 1 overall pick, but you also are at the very back end of the waiver, so you really don't have much of a chance to get some of the big name guys. So you really, so saving and sitting on that waiver is even more amplified. That need to do that's even more amplified.
Yeah.
As other teams start to take waiver week after week, because you need to move up in that pecking order to maybe have one of those guys fall in your lap in a week or two, or maybe even 3 if it takes that long. But pay attention, watch those. And I know those guys don't really have serviceable backups. I know Deion Lewis is Saquon's backup, and Mike Davis is the backup for Christian McCaffrey, and neither one of those two guys is really going to move the needle that much.
Yeah. So, and basically what that comes down to is, like, well, let's say you are using Fab. Don't freak out and just start throwing all your Fab dollars at the immediate backup to the player. Don't throw all your Fab dollars on Mike Davis. Don't throw all your Fab dollars at Deion Lewis or Wayne Gallman. Save it for someone who can really come in and help you at that position. Don't panic. It's basically what I'm getting at.
So here's a good example, because I've been in this situation before, and obviously it was different circumstances. But years ago, I think this was. I don't know if this is my first. No, this wasn't my first year playing fantasy, but it was one of my early years. It was the year AP got suspended for, I guess, technically put on the commissioner's exemption list or something like that for the child abuse scandal that he was. I
remember that
a part of. AP was my first round pick. I was in trouble after that, and I was scrambling to find somebody to kind of fill his role. And it turned out to be, in a few short weeks, due to waiting on my waiver pickup, I grabbed Brandon Oliver from the Chargers, and he was an absolute stud for the rest of the year. And
how many weeks did you wait for that?
I think I only had to wait like 2 weeks for it. It wasn't that long. It might have been 3. I don't know, but it wasn't all that long.
You jump immediately and try to grab and try to like.
Right, I didn't just jump to try to grab, spend my waiver spot to grab his immediate backup, or just a guy who I think could fill in as maybe a borderline high end RB3, RB2, or low end RB2. I waited. And I was very careful at what I was looking at. I waited for the right guy because I knew I had to fill a big hole, and I didn't want to just fill it with anything. I needed to fill it with something I knew was going to at least give me something. And Brandon Oliver was that guy that year, and he helped propel me a lot further than I thought I was going to be able to go. So that's kind of an example of what you want to look for is, don't just jump. Because obviously in the situation with Christian McCaffrey, maybe you can, if you have one of the lower end guys in your roster that maybe you were sitting on, but they haven't really done much, that's a situation where you can maybe jump and try to get a guy who can fill in for a couple of weeks. In the case of Saquon Barkley, you're playing the long game here. You need to wait and find the right guy just to be, you need to be a little bit smarter about your waiver pickup here.
But and then you look at guys like, for example, another injury that happened was Devontae Adams. He had a hamstring injury. Usually with the hamstrings, I mean, sometimes they come back the very next week. Depending on the severity, they may miss a week or two.
Kenny Galladay.
In that position, what I've found, and I think anyone who's played depth. Yeah, what I've found, and I think anyone who's played fantasy for a few years has noticed this, is there are tons of options on the waiver wire for wide receivers.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of good spot starts that you can use. And in an event of a hamstring injury, Devontae Adams, if you don't have the depth, again, a spot start could work. And a lot of times, you don't have to use a waiver or fab for a spot start. You could get them after the waiver wire for free.
I would straight up say that in week 3 of a fantasy football season, now week 16 or whatever, week 15 or even week 11, using a waiver obviously is a little bit more important, and you would probably want to jump to use that waiver to make sure you get your guy. But week 3 in a fantasy season, keep your waiver spot. Let that waiver period end and grab somebody off the free agency pile, because I'll tell you right now, you don't have to look all that far to find a guy for 1 week without Devontae Adams. Look on his own roster. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to be available in a lot of leagues. Guys like Alan Lazard is available in a lot of leagues. Those are both going to be serviceable guys to pick up. And frankly, you should really have a wide receiver on your roster that you can plug in and play for 1 week. Yeah. If you don't, then you've got some serious depth issues, and I hope your running backs are insane. But if you really do need to find a wide receiver for a spot start here, you don't have to look all that far, and you definitely don't need to spend a waiver pickup to get them. Because again, it's only 1 to 2 weeks. It's a situation where you probably have a guy on your roster that you can fill in comfortably, and if you don't, the free agency pile is going to have names galore to have you pick up. And I'll throw out a few names when we get to the waiver pickups here that you can look for. But there's tons of names, and like you mentioned, go based on matchup with some of these. Some teams are not good at covering slot receivers. Some teams are not good at covering secondary guys, but they're really good against number ones. Well, those are the teams you want to exploit. You just got to do a little bit of extra homework here. That's all. Mm-hmm. But no need to spend a waiver pickup on a spot start this early in the year. Later on in the year, that's a little different because you're fighting for playoffs, seeding, etc. But this early in the year, wait till free agency is over. Wait till free agency is around here. Until you make that move to fill in a spot start here. Yeah.
All right. And some other non-injury related news. So Jonathan Taylor, he took over the lead back role in Indy this week, and he went off. 28 touches, 110 yards, and a score. He got a lot of carries.
He got his.
Nyheim Hines all of a sudden disappeared. 1 catch, no carries.
Right. And, I said last week that I felt like Nyheim Hines was the guy to look at in the here and now, just because I didn't know what kind of comfortability Jonathan Taylor was going to have with this offense and jumping to the NFL. Well, that proved me wrong this week.
Yeah. I thought Hines' role was secure. Like I could see it going up. I'm like, there's no way it's going to be reduced. Like,
right. And Jonathan Taylor jumped to prove us both wrong this week. That's for sure.
Yeah. So what are you making of this then? Like, what are you making of this backfield? Do you see this being the norm? Nyheim Hines barely getting any run, Jonathan Taylor getting all the run. Do you see Jonathan Taylor as being a borderline RB1 the rest of the way?
I see Jonathan Taylor as being a high end RB2. I not necessarily. Maybe some weeks he'll show flashes of RB1. You'll see it every now and then. I think he'll flirt with it. But for Nyheim Hines, I don't think you'll ever see him be this low. Just because of the fact that I think game flow kind of dictated a little bit more of running the ball for the Colts today.
Well, the only way to be lower is to straight up not play.
Exactly. So I think the game flow dictated a little bit more of the Colts running the ball and using Jonathan Taylor with the hot hand today, which is very effective for them. So I think you will see Nyheim Hines, his usage will increase from this week at least. There's only one way to go here. Let's be real. I think Nyheim Hines is still very safe in the passing game. I'm not overly panicked about that. I don't think he's really got a ton of relevance in standard leagues regardless, but I do think in PPR leagues he has some relevance there, maybe as a low-end flex or a spot start flex play. But Jonathan Taylor definitely is the back to own in that backfield 100% moving forward. He had his breakout game this week. He's got the hot hand, and they're going to continue to ride with it, and he's going to continue to make things happen with it. So like I said, I think he's got high-end RB2, low-end RB1 upside for sure.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Jonnu Smith. This is a lot of guy that people pegged as a deep draft target at the tight end position and someone who could really fill in Delaney Walker's role. So far in 2 games, he has 120 yards and 3 touchdowns.
So far, so good.
That's tight end 1 production. Is Jonnu Smith a tight end 1?
Yes, absolutely. Ryan Tannehill loves his tight end.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves his tight end, and he's got a good reason to do it. Jonnu Smith has been very reliable for him, and he absolutely has filled in for Delaney Walker out there. I feel very comfortable with Jonnu Smith as my primary tight end moving forward. I was a guy who drafted both Jonnu Smith and Blake Jarwin and that was going to be my tight end mix. I was very comfortable with that too because I had a good feeling with Jonnu Smith going into it. Obviously, I lost Blake Jarwin, but I didn't panic. I'll be honest. I did not panic. I'm still not panicking, obviously, because I do think Jonnu Smith has the ability and will get the opportunities to be the number 1 guy. Now, not having A.J. Brown in the lineup does kind of boost Jonnu Smith a little bit, but I do think there is enough of a role with A.J. Brown in there for Jonnu Smith to continue to be effective week in and week out. Curious to hear your thoughts, though.
I 100% agree. And it's not so much the overall target share. I mean, he has 12 targets, which is nothing to scoff at in 2 games. but it's the amount of red zone looks he's getting, and that's a lot of times where a fantasy football tight end can make his money is in the red zone. If Jonnu Smith's red zone opportunities stay consistent as they have been the first 2 weeks, I see no reason why he wouldn't be an tight end 1 for the rest of the season. That's where I have him pegged. That's where I was hoping he'd be to start the season, and I think it's looking up for Jonnu.
I'll add on to that. His matchup next week looks to be pretty damn good. The Vikings this week gave up 111 yards on 5 catches to a guy by the name of Moali Cox or whatever his name was. I've never heard of him before today. I'll be honest with you. So if they're giving up yardage like that to a tight end for the Colts, I'm going to be pretty comfortable keeping Jonnu Smith as my guy rolling into next week. And
start of the week, hint.
I would agree with that. I won't disagree at all. So I'm pretty comfortable with Jonnu Smith moving forward. He does run into some tougher matchups moving down the road. Buffalo in a couple of weeks. He's got the Broncos in week 4. The Steelers in week 4. Then he's got Buffalo after that. So that is a little bit tougher matchup. However, the Steelers don't look all that great against tight ends either. Noah Fant had 57 yards and a touchdown today for them on 4 catches. So
yeah,
I think Jonnu Smith can play comfortably there. Buffalo may be a little tougher matchup, but then he's got the Texans, who I think he can handle as well. So I like his schedule. I like his usage in the red zone. I like his usage overall. I think he's a guy that Ryan Tannehill really seems to like. So Jonnu Smith absolutely can be an RB1, tight end 1 in my opinion.
And you mentioned Tannehill. That's one other guy I want to touch on. Is he has been on fire to start the season. 488.
I called it.
488 yards, passing yards, and 6 touchdowns through 2 games. One of those games being against Denver, who may have one of the best secondaries in the NFL.
Andrew, how long have I been touting Ryan Tannehill for this fantasy football season? The entire time.
You gave the hot take of the century, unfortunately, just before we started recording, but
right.
It was that Ryan Tannehill was going to outscore Aaron Rodgers this season.
Which, Aaron Rodgers obviously having a solid start to the year, but so is Ryan Tannehill. So I think Tannehill is a little bit ahead of him right now, isn't he?
Yeah, after this week, I think so.
After this week, I think so. So far, my hot take is good.
Yeah.
And I said it. I like Tannehill going into this year. I said people were sleeping on him. I loved the way he finished out last season and in the playoffs as well. And I was going to ride that wave. I'm feeling the Tannehill wave, man.
I just can't wait to see what happens once A.J. Brown gets healthy.
Oh, God, yes. I really think it's a perfect storm for a guy like Ryan Tannehill to be successful because teams are going to look for the run first. When you've got a guy like Derrick Henry in your backfield and the play action, the ability to run play fakes is so great for a quarterback because it gives them so much time. He can run the ball. They can run the ball effectively with Derrick Henry, obviously. Outside of today wasn't great, but in most cases they can, which opens up the passing lanes, forces single coverage, forces cover 1 defenses because they have to stack the box, and it opens things wide open for guys like Jonnu Smith, guys like Corey Davis in the red zone, guys like A.J. Brown and Adam Humphries. It just opens the field up so much more and gives Tannehill the time he needs to make plays, and that's why I liked him. I loved him going into this season. He was a guy I wanted to put on almost all of my rosters if I could, if I landed in the right spot.
Before we move on to starts and sits, I do want to shift to the Jags offense real quick. One that has surprised me so far this season. James Robinson, 120 yards and a touchdown, 19 carries today. And Gardner Minshew now has 6 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season.
That's gonna continue next week.
How high are you on this Jags offense for fantasy? Because I thought it was gonna be a fantasy dead zone outside of DJ Chark.
At least for one more week, I love it. At least for one more week, I love it. I'm honestly shocked. James Robinson has been a very nice, very very nice factor for this offense. It gives them a nice wrinkle. Having Gardner Minshew play with the Minshew magic that he had when he first came on last season is nice to see as well. But again, I love their matchup going into the next week as well. Hint, hint, hint at something to come. But the Dolphins really are not a very good defense at all. So I think that at least for another week, this Jags team's going to keep it rolling. Yes, this defense or this offense going to keep it rolling for at least one more week.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into our starts and sits.
I do have one more question for you before we do that.
Okay.
Last week we saw Malcolm Brown be the lead guy in the backfield for the LA Rams. This week it was quite the opposite, and we thought it was going to be Malcolm Brown. Well, this week it was Darrell Henderson. What do you and obviously he was very effective this week as well with 12 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. It was more of a 50-50 split, but obviously Henderson was the far more effective back this week. And it's not like Malcolm Brown was bad. He still averaged over 4.3 yards a carry, but Darrell Henderson was just quite a bit better. So what do you have to make of this backfield moving forward?
I hate this backfield.
I mean, it looks like a guy is going to be effective each week.
Yeah.
Just who is it?
So I still lean Malcolm Brown, and here's why. I really liked what Malcolm Brown did week 1. And like you said, it was about a 50-50 split. What I have to take into account here is half of Henderson's production came on one big chunk play. Uh-oh.
The Chiefs won on a field goal.
Yes. But half of Darrell Henderson's production came on a chunk play. So I don't know how much I want to put into his 12 carries for 81 because I always hate doing this, but when I have to try to separate a backfield like this, I have to take every little tiny factor into account. And if you take away that one chunk play, he did the same exact thing as Malcolm Brown. So I'm gonna go until I see Darrell Henderson steadily outperform Malcolm Brown, like to the point where it's no competition. I think I gotta stick with Malcolm Brown, but honestly, in my advice, I just stay away from this backfield entirely. But if I had to pick one, until I'm convinced otherwise, I gotta still roll with Malcolm Brown.
I'm gonna go a little bit differently here. I'm gonna agree with you in avoiding this backfield first. Secondly, I am gonna go a little bit differently, and I'm gonna say that I don't think that there is one guy to choose in this backfield. I don't lean one or the other. I am riding the fence 50-50 the whole way.
Pick one.
I'm not even gonna pick one because I think it's gonna be 50-50 the whole way.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see a complete running back by committee here with the two guys up top. They love doing their end arounds with Robert Woods as well, so we see a few of those a game. I don't think you're going to see anybody really take control of the backfield. I don't see it unless Darrell Henderson, and I think he's really the only guy that's going to get the opportunity to take control of the backfield unless he becomes truly super effective and a lot more effective than Malcolm Brown, then you won't see anything but a true 50-50 split in this backfield.
Now, what Darrell Henderson does have going for him is
the big playability.
Looks like they're using him a bit in receiving work. He did have 2 catches, 40 yards today. Malcolm Brown was not catching any balls, so there is that aspect that Darrell Henderson does have going for him. But yeah, I agree. Again, I don't like this backfield.
I don't either. So let's go ahead and move on into our waiver wire pickups here. If you want to start it off,
yes, sir.
Please feel free.
Start with the QBs. Oh, you want to start with waivers or start set? Sorry.
Waivers.
Got you. All right, let's go with the obvious here then. And with Saquon Barkley out for the year, the spotlight's on the combination of Wayne Gallman, Deion Lewis. Who's going to step up? Wayne Gallman in a spot start last year when Saquon Barkley missed the game, he had 118 yards total offense and 2 touchdowns. I'm not personally the biggest Wayne Gallman fan, but when you look at the fact that by all intents and purposes, he wasn't supposed to make the roster this year, and he literally won the coaches over in camp. And you combine that with the fact that Deion Lewis, I still don't think he has the build to be like a bona fide starting back. So if I had to choose between the two, I'm actually leaning picking up Wayne Gallman between the two guys. So I'm going to make Wayne Gallman my.
We've seen Wayne Gallman be effective in spots in the past, so I am going to agree with you here. I think Wayne Gallman has more of an ability to have the big game. I don't think Deion Lewis quite has that ability anymore. So I'm going to agree with you on Wayne Gallman. My waiver wire pickup is, though, a different backfield that had some injuries this week. We saw Raheem Mostert go down, and he's going to be out for a couple weeks likely. And then we saw Tevin Coleman go down with a knee injury. Now, I do not know the status of Tevin Coleman for next week or the week following. I don't know that we will know until next weekend.
Yeah.
If Tevin Coleman is going to play, and he is practicing this week, and I want at least one full practice out of him, maybe even 2. I would lean Tevin Coleman as my waiver pickup. However, I'm going to go based on the history with Tevin Coleman, where he does not play this week, and I'm going to say that Jerick McKinnon is my waiver pickup at running back this week. In Yahoo leagues, he's only owned in. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong thing. Jerick McKinnon's only owned in 22% of Yahoo leagues. In today's game, he had 77 yards and a touchdown on 3 carries. Obviously, he didn't get a ton of opportunity with only having the 3 carries, but he did break a big one for the score. So I do like Jerick McKinnon moving forward. We've seen him be effective. They paid him big money to be effective in San Francisco. So if Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert are unable to go next weekend, I would look for Jerick McKinnon to be a guy to pick up this week to be a spot starter for me until those guys get healthy.
I like it. Are you threatened by Jeff Wilson at all there?
Only on goal line situations, and that's just reality when Jeff Wilson is in your backfield. We saw this last year with Raheem Mostert. Even he was having touchdowns vultured by Jeff Wilson. So I don't know if I would consider him any more of a threat to Jerick McKinnon than Jeff Wilson was to Raheem Mostert. Maybe a little bit because Raheem Mostert might be a little bit better on the goal line than Jerick McKinnon, but I do think that there is a threat there, but only in goal line situations.
Yeah. All right. My next pickup is a receiver. And it's only mentioned last week, but he's still available in 79% of leagues. So it's Russell Gage.
Yep. He scored today.
Yep. Again, 6 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown. The target share was still decently high at 9 targets for Russell Gage.
That's not even decently high. That's high. That's good. That's a good target share.
I said decently high because it is technically lower than what he had last week, but it's still high.
True.
So, but again, Russell Gage could prove to be a week in, week out, like a solid flex play every single week. Obviously, he's not going to I should rephrase. Russell Gage will be in flex consideration every single week at a minimum. Obviously, when you're in that crowd of a receiving core, he's obviously not going to give you that level of production every week, but every single week he should be in the conversation. That kind of guy shouldn't be sitting on the waiver wire.
I'm going to agree with you. He's on my list as well, and I'm going to continue riding this Russell Gage train until people learn. I will keep riding this train until people learn, and he's picked up in every league because he needs to be owned in just about every league right now. He's getting enough targets in this offense. Teams obviously have their hands full with the mix of Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones on the outside, which opens things wide open for a guy like Russell Gage to make plays happen. And he's making the most of his opportunities and putting up points for his team as well as your team if you have him on your roster. So I will continue to ride this train until people learn. I agree with picking up Russell Gage this week. In fact, I would expect his percentage roster this going into next week to double, which means he'll be on my list again next week.
Yep.
Keeping with the wide receivers, I actually am going to put Corey Davis on my list. And this is pretty much predicated on A.J. Brown may or may not be healthy moving into next week. I know he's got that bone bruise, but even if he is, he may not be 100% because I'm pretty sure this has been an injury that's been nagging him since training camp. So he may not be 100% going into next week, which may open things up for Corey Davis. He had an opportunity this week, probably moving into the number one. Only caught 3 balls, but he did catch a touchdown. But I do think that in the red zone, while Jonnu Smith is going to get the first look, Corey Davis is a guy that's going to get the second look. So he's owned in 42% of Yahoo leagues, and I do think he's a guy that you can potentially pick up this week as a spot start going into your next matchup. So maybe, he is touchdown reliant, but touchdown reliant guys are guys that you can take a gamble on in spot starts. So I do like Corey Davis going into next week, especially if A.J. Brown doesn't play.
One guy I want to throw out as a flyer that you can take a look at in deeper leagues. This is a guy who obviously can produce, but I wouldn't so much as throw him out there willy-nilly. It's more of a spot start, and then if injury happens, he could blow up. It's Chase Claypool. This is a guy I had my eye on from the draft process. I just didn't know what his role was going to be. On Thursday, against Denver, he had 3 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. The coaches love him. This is a guy that I would say I don't even know if I would say use a waiver on him. I think you might be able to pick him up and just stash him. But I think this is a guy that could blow up and could even give you some dynasty potential. So I would try to jump on him earlier rather than later. So I'll throw Chase Claypool into the mix.
I'm gonna switch on over to tight end here, and I do have one. And we mentioned him last week, and I'm going to continue with this week. Is Logan Thomas, the tight end for the Redskins? I know he didn't have a great week this week, but I believe their matchup does kind of soften up for tight ends. So give me just a second. Let me look at it here. Oh, where'd he go on my list? But I do think that just because he's going to get the opportunity. Here we go. Well, he's got Baltimore next week. No, sorry. That's week 4, and I lost him again. Either way, he's got actually there it is, Cleveland, the Browns. He's got a solid matchup next week. I do think that Dwayne Haskins does like Logan Thomas. Throwing the ball to him. I think he's a guy who can make some plays for you. So I'm going to keep riding that train at least for a little while longer. And I do think he rebounds a bit next week. I think that the Redskins had a tough matchup. So
I agree. All right,
I do have a quarterback.
My last one is a quarterback. I'm going Justin Herbert.
Oh, that's not who I thought.
Yeah, I know. I think Justin Herbert played very well in spot, and he threw it for over 300 yards in Tyrod Taylor's place. Now, there's no guarantee that Justin Herbert actually secures a starting job in Week 3, but I think if the coach have any sense and looked at how the Chargers played this week, I think this should be Justin Herbert's job, and if it is, I think there's a world of potential there. So that's why I like Justin Herbert.
I think Tyrod Taylor's career must be cursed or something because dude isn't a bad quarterback in any way. And he's got an ability, he's got the ability to start, but any chance that he misses a game, the guy that comes in for him takes over the starting job. And Justin Herbert should take over the starting job. He's the guy you invested a ton of draft capital in. He's the guy that you grabbed early in the past draft. He's your rookie. He's the guy you're trying to build around, and he played well against a good Chiefs defense. I know their secondary was depleted, but he played well against a good Chiefs defense this week. And I think you need to ride that and let the kid learn. I like Justin Herbert moving forward as well. But the guy I'm going to take,
I think I know where you're going with this
on the waiver wires, the guy we mentioned earlier, and I gave a little hint for it, is I'm going with the Minshew Magic.
We'll lay out the red carpet.
I'm laying out the red carpet for some Minshew Magic. Give me Gardner Minshew this week. He's had an incredible start to the year. He's got a true number 1 in DJ Chark. He's got a running back who's been effective. He's able to make plays happen. And he's got one hell of a matchup going into next week against the Dolphins. I may even consider, if you don't have one of those clear one of those clear number 1 quarterbacks, I may look to start this guy over who you got now. Because Gardner Minshew may have a big week next week, and he's definitely poised to do it. I like what he's got going right now. He's riding the wave. And I have no reason to believe otherwise at least going into next week. So Gardner Minshew is a guy on my list to pick up for Week 3.
All right. That's all my waivers.
Shall we move on? Nope, that was it. Shall we move to starts and sits?
Let's run it.
Okay. I will let you start this one off as well.
All right. Start with QB. I think this is an easy one. I may be making the same mistake I made last week, but screw it. Give me Kyler Murray against the Lions.
Yep, that's my start of the week.
I know the Aaron Rodgers one didn't pan out, but I have all the faith in the world that Kyler Murray will pan out because unlike Aaron Rodgers, I think Kyler Murray will gash Lions on the ground too.
That's the big difference for me this week. Going from this upcoming week, coming from the Aaron Rodgers play, and I know the Aaron Rodgers play did not work out. However, Kyler Murray is a multifaceted quarterback. He can beat you on the ground. He can beat you through the air. He's a good pocket passer as well as a very mobile quarterback. As we saw today, he scored twice on the ground. 20-plus yards, both of them. The dude is legit when it comes to the ball in his hands. He's going to make plays happen next week. I look for him to score at least once on the ground, throw 2, maybe 3 touchdowns as well. I think he's going to have a monster week next week against the Lions, who can't seem to stop anybody. And frankly, he looks to be the lead running back for the team right now. So I would look for Kyler Murray to have just a massive week going up against the Lions in Week 3. My quarterback start, since you took my top guy, is actually going to be Ben Roethlisberger going up against the Texans. The Texans as a whole, that team is just not very good right now. They have holes all over the place. Can't seem to really stop much. They gave up 33 points to the Ravens. And I know the Ravens are a damn good team, but Lamar Jackson did not throw a pick. They didn't force any turnovers. And I expect Ben Roethlisberger to take advantage of that as well, who had a good bounce-back week. Juju seemed to come alive this week. So I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to be able to pick apart that Texans D quite a bit and look for Juju to have a good week as well. So I like Ben Roethlisberger this week as well.
Yeah. My other start of the week, I didn't think I'd be pulling this one this early in the season. I'm going Cam Newton against the Raiders.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. I liked what I saw out of Teddy Bridgewater against them last week. I think the Raiders looked very vulnerable against them. And Teddy Bridgewater made him pay with 270 yards passing, 114 of them to Robbie Anderson. I think Cam Newton could do even worse. Could make the Raiders look even worse than that. I think Cam Newton is a really smart spot play in week 3, and that is why I am putting him as my second QB start of the week.
It's a ballsy pick. I like Cam Newton early on in the season better than later on in the season because of all the hits he can take throughout the year. But I definitely think it's a matchup that I would look to take advantage of as well. Yeah. But I don't have any other quarterbacks to start. I'm going to switch on
Cam
over.
Newton really got down on the ground against.
He did, absolutely.
Against the Dolphins. So.
I'm going to switch over to the sits of the week here.
Yeah.
My first sit of the week is Josh Allen going up against the Rams.
You got mine right there. So
the Rams defense is stupid good. They made Carson Wentz look like Mitch Trubisky when he's normal.
This is my sit of the week from last week. Let's go.
Carson Wentz threw two picks today and no touchdowns.
It was ugly.
It was ugly. So I look for the Rams to shut down Josh Allen this upcoming week. And I know Josh Allen's a damn good quarterback for fantasy purposes, but I'm not real intrigued about his possibilities going into this one.
That was my sit of the week as well, so we're in agreement. Do you want to kick off running backs?
I do have another one sit of the week. I do.
Oh.
So I apologize for taking yours.
Cool. Go for it.
It's Matt Ryan against the Bears. The Bears defense has looked actually pretty good. I know they haven't really faced the greatest of competition. I will say Matthew Stafford is pretty good. I felt like they did a solid job after the first half, especially in the second half, and then they made Daniel Jones look like a kindergartner today. So
they did.
I think that the Bears defense is just good enough to slow down Matt Ryan enough to make it not necessarily a bad play, but it's one that I don't think Matt Ryan will excite you all that much this week, and I don't think he's going to win you any games.
Okay, I can see that. Just to be clear, though, if you have Matt Ryan in a standard league, you're still rolling with him unless you have a really good backup, right?
Most likely, unless here's a perfect situation. I would start Gardner Minshew over Matt Ryan this week.
Whoa.
I would.
Right.
That's one of those perfect situations that I was talking about where if I'm not overly confident in my starting quarterback, I am looking at Gardner Minshew this week, and Matt Ryan is one of those guys I am not overly confident this week. And this may blow up in my face. It's a hot take. However, I really do believe Gardner Minshew's got a great matchup, and I do not love Matt Ryan's matchup this week. Like I said, I'm expecting like in a standard league, like an 18, 19 point week for Matt Ryan. I expect somewhere around 25, 26, 27 for Minshew.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to running backs. My start of the week here is going to be Austin Eckler against the Panthers.
That's one of mine.
They let Josh Jacobs go for 25 carries, 93 yards, and 3 touchdowns in week 1. Then they let Fournette go for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 2. This Panthers defense is god-awful. Maybe one of the worst I've ever seen. It is bad, okay? Just preview, I'm probably going to be recommending a lot of starts in the future against the Panthers defense, starting with Austin Eckler.
I agree. He is on my list for starts here. My first start of the week, though, I don't know if anybody watched the 1:00 games today. I don't know if anybody saw a certain man in green and yellow at Lambeau Field just torch the Lions defense, but Kenyon Drake going up against the Lions next week has one of the best matchups of the week, hands down. I expect Kenyon Drake to just go off. This Lions defense can't stop the run, and I'm a Lions fan. This Lions defense can't stop the run to save their damn lives. And Kenyon Drake is going to make no exception of that. I'm loving Kenyon Drake going into next week. He's my guy. I'm glad I have him on my roster. That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah. If you don't have another start, I'm ready to move on to sits here.
I am ready to move on to sits as well.
All right. I'm going Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
That's my sit of the week.
Going against Baltimore. Baltimore just held David Johnson 11 carries, 34 yards, no touchdowns. This defense is legit, man. And not to mention Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not look the greatest this week against the Chargers. No. He had a fall back to earth and 10 carries, 38 yards. I'm hesitant to play him next week against Baltimore. That's why he's my sit of the week.
He's my sit of the week as well. I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire has got a great couple of matchups here. He had a tough one this week against Chargers. He's got an even tougher one next week against the Ravens. I think they'll shut him down.
Yeah.
My next sit, that was my first one. My second sit of the week here is actually, you mentioned him, David Johnson, going up against the Steelers. Going up against the Steelers. I know that the Broncos backfield isn't like otherworldly, but they pretty much shut down Melvin Gordon. He had 19 carries for 70 yards, 3.7 yard per carry average. Not great by any means. No touchdowns given up on the ground as well. I like the Steelers defense to slow down David Johnson quite a bit. I also don't quite think he's gotten entirely comfortable with that Texans backfield either. So I look for them to put the clamps on David Johnson this week. Also, last week, just to give you an idea, running wise, they shut Saquon Barkley down. 15 carries for 6 yards.
Jesus.
So they gave up a total of 29 yards to Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Deion Lewis last week on the ground. So I expect the Steelers to really kind of put the clamps on David Johnson this week.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree with you there. I like that one. But moving on to wide receivers. I'm jumping on this Jaguars bandwagon with you. Give me DJ Chark against Miami. This is a secondary that allowed Stephon Diggs and John Brown to go for 235 and 2 TDs this week. I don't see why DJ Chark will be doing anything different. It's an easy play, DJ Chark.
I think that's absolutely an easy play. He's Gardner Minshew's favorite target, and he's going to feed him the football.
Let's say he's going to chew up the field.
I have an interesting start of the week here, and it kind of counteracts what I said in the waiver targets, but my start for wide receiver this week is A.J. Brown if he plays.
If he plays.
If he does not play, I look for either Corey Davis or Adam Humphries going up against the Vikings. The Vikings secondary has been doo-doo. Yeah. It's been terrible, giving up points galore to wide receivers. Great matchup going ahead for anybody in this receiving core. If A.J. Brown plays, he's my guy. If he does not, I'm still rolling with the number one guy in that Tennessee Titans defense. Mm-hmm. So I like that opportunity quite a bit there.
Yep.
But I do have one more start if you don't have one.
Me too.
All right, go ahead.
I actually have a duo here, just like I recommended Diggs and Brown last week. I'm going Coop Gallup. Sorry, I should abbreviate. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup against Seattle. We haven't seen what they're going to do in week 2, but going off week 1, they allowed 300-yard receivers to Atlanta. And this Dallas offense, as long as McCarthy is not being overly conservative, is lethal. So I expect Coop and Gallup to have a field day against Seattle. This secondary looks very vulnerable. So either one, I think it's a coin toss. You can go both.
I like that actually. I think both will be very effective. I think Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup both are very solid receivers, and I think their matchup is excellent moving forward here. So, moving on into my next start of the week, I've got DeAndre Hopkins going up against the Lions. And if there's a theme, if you've noticed a theme with my plays here, it's go after the Lions defense, because that Lions defense is terrible. And I know this burned me a bit last week with Devontae Adams. However, he did get hurt. Mm-hmm. However, DeAndre Hopkins is just a whole different animal, and I don't think the Lions have any chance of matching up with him next week. Doesn't matter who's healthy. I think DeAndre Hopkins is able to just dominate Lions secondary and make plays happen. I also think there's enough there in Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald to keep the Lions secondary honest.
Yeah.
And not just drape all over everybody you can on DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Hopkins has an opportunity to have a big day up against the Lions.
Oh yeah. My start of the week at wide receiver, DJ Moore
That's my number one sit of the week right there.
I have my lone note here for this is message received to the Chargers. That secondary looks legit, man.
Which is so crazy. Honestly, Derwin James being out for the year, who would have thought they would have had as good of a secondary as they have?
Yeah. Next man up.
I guess it clearly works for them because they've been able to shut every receiver down that they've gone up against, and poor DJ Moore is going to run into a buzzsaw next week.
Yeah.
My sit of the week, and I'm going to piggyback off of my quarterback sit here. I didn't like Matt Ryan. Well, I don't really like the Falcons receivers this week either.
Oh.
Again, I'm not saying that they're going to be totally shut down like DJ Moore will be this week. I'm going to say that don't expect any kind of big plays from their receiving duo in Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones against the Bears. I think the Bears defense is just good enough to slow them down. If you're desperate for them to have a big game for you to win a matchup, maybe that's not the play you need to play. So I would look elsewhere, and especially in DFS, if I was looking at these two, I'd look elsewhere.
Oh yeah, they're a very popular DFS play every week. So
absolutely, tight ends. I've got a couple of starts here.
Yeah, I think we have the same one here, but you can go for it.
I'll start off with Greg Olsen going up against the Cowboys. Right. Greg Olsen, is he the same Greg Olsen that played for Carolina? No, he had a solid week one. He scored. However, the Cowboys' linebacking core and their secondary, especially the linebacking core, is a little bit depleted. Sean Lee's out due to the sports hernia surgery that he had. Who knows how long he's going to miss for that? I believe they put him on IR, actually. He's out for at least a few weeks. So not having Sean Lee on that Cowboys defense really makes them vulnerable there. I do like Greg Olsen this week. If I recall, Cowboys gave up... Let me find it. Here we go. Hayden Hurst put up 5 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown this week. So that kind of tells you what a tight end can do against this Cowboys defense. So I'm looking at Greg Olsen this week to be effective against the Cowboys.
All right. I got Jonnu Smith. I know you're on this one with me.
I thought it was just too easy.
Yeah, I got Jonnu Smith against Minnesota. I mean, the guy's been a beast, and Mo Alley Cox just torched him for 111 yards today, like you said. It's an easy play, and it's a no brainer. Jonnu Smith.
I went a different route just because I knew you were going to take him. Jonnu Smith is a guy that, like I mentioned earlier, the Vikings defense is absolutely terrible. They can't stop anything through the air at all. So I am leaning on Jonnu Smith moving forward here, and his matchup is just absolutely amazing. So he may be just my overall start of the week.
Yeah.
My next guy to look at, though, I do have one more. When is he going
to get expensive in FanDuel is my question, because he's been
I don't
cheap
know. He's been pretty
weeks.
cheap and up and riding it. My next one, though, is actually Austin Hooper against the Redskins. The Redskins' defense is not very good against tight ends at all. I actually think Austin Hooper is an opportunity for the Browns to have a big week. I think that Browns offense can really get going, especially if they look to Austin Hooper in the red zone. This week, to give you an idea, I just had it pulled up. Where'd it go? Oh, boy, I lost it again. I just had it pulled up. There it is. Sorry, not the Redskins, the Washington football team. Washington football team.
Why do I feel like saying their old name is like that much worse now?
Oh, I know, right? Right? The Washington football team, which, by the way, I'm curious, is there actually any like Washington football team gear out there? Because I feel like it's going to be super collectible someday.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that because, 1 year of production.
A 1 year thing, right. But I don't think the Washington football team is going to be very good against tight ends. I don't think the Cardinals really have a great option there. But
yeah, there is Washington football team gear. If you're
really, I kind of want to get me some. But I don't like the Redskins defense all that much outside of their pass rush and they're outside of their D line really. But I think Austin Hooper has a chance to make some big plays happen next week for the Browns.
I like that one. My sit of the week at tight end, Tyler Higbee against Buffalo. He had a big week this week, but that Buffalo D has been real stout against tight ends, among other positions. But
right.
But yeah, tight ends, they have not been able to get anything done through the first 2 weeks of the season against Buffalo. I don't anticipate seeing anything different in week 3. Yep.
I've got Evan Ingram as my set of the week going up against the 49ers. The 49ers defense is very stingy, especially to tight ends. I don't love that matchup at all, and I don't think Daniel Jones has been very effective to start the season. And I don't think that's going to change at all against that tough defense in San Francisco. So I would sit Evan Ingram this week.
Okay. All right, so move on to defenses.
Yeah, we can go ahead and move on to some defenses here. I went with the route of taking a couple of defenses that I think could be some good plays. I like the Colts defense this week. They're a matchup that I think can be taken advantage of going up against the
Jets.
The Jets. The Jets offense. Adam Gase sucks as a play caller.
It just should have been it. It should have been Adam Gase sucks. All right, Andrew, what do you got?
But they just don't have playmakers on that team. Le'Veon Bell's gone for a hot minute. Sam Darnold honestly may have the worst job in the world because I don't think he's that bad, but he's got nobody to throw the ball to. That whole team just sucks. Give me the Colts defense next week.
I'm going Chargers against Carolina. Chargers defense again has looked legit. They largely kept the Chiefs out of the red zone for most of end zone for most of this game. They went bend and don't break, but it worked. All right. And Carolina's offense, especially if they're going to be missing McCaffrey, is going to be awful.
Yeah. I've got one more defense I like here. And I'm going to beat up on a rookie this week. And I'm going with the Eagles defense up against the Bengals and Joe Burrow.
Oh, Lord.
Rookies are always prone to interceptions, and I don't think that's going to change this week at all. I think the Eagles defense has a solid defensive line, a solid pass rush to really get in his head and disrupt him. I think that's going to create some turnovers this week. So I'd look for the Eagles to be a nice flyer.
All right. The only other defense I had, and I still don't, and I'm going to be honest, I still don't know how to feel about this Vikings offense, but I like the Tennessee defense against them because looking at how abysmal they looked this week, especially the passing game.
The Vikings? Yeah.
Yeah, the Vikings.
Whew. Ugly.
I think Tennessee can expose them.
What? Okay.
I really do.
The Vikings offense is so confusing to me because they were actually like they on paper are a really good offense. They were good last year. What is it? What's wrong? Did Stephon Diggs make that much of a difference?
There's no way. It's I haven't been able to watch a game in full, just whatever pops up on Red Zone, but like I don't know what to tell you about what's wrong, but I'm going to take advantage of it while I can.
Absolutely.
So that's why, and I do like Tennessee's defense to begin with. So going against the Vikings and their broken offense, I'll take it.
Absolutely. So that's my starts of the week and starts and sits of the week. That's all I got. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mean, if you want to go the obvious, like San Francisco 49ers against the Giants, you could, but that's too obvious.
I think the Niners are a team you play every week.
But yeah, no, that's everything I got.
That's all I got as well. Thank you guys again for listening. That's going to call it for this week of the Fanalists.
The Fanalists.
But we will catch you guys next week. Hopefully we...
Because there's no such thing as a fantasy football expert, just analysts. Just Fanalists.
All right. Hopefully, if you play some DFS, we make you guys a little bit of money.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll see.
We do require 20% kickback.
I think that's in our contract, right?
Somewhere.
Anyways, guys, we'll catch you next week. Same time, same place. Andrew, thank you for joining me, and thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast as well. Check us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Check out our other podcasts as well, The Fan Report, especially if you're a Detroit sports fan. We really break down and it's
a depressing podcast this week. I'll tell you that.
I mean, as a Detroit sports fan, it's a depressing time.
Yeah. We try to light it up towards the end with some business talk, but
we really beat up on the Lions this week.
Yeah.
And that kind of just continued on into this one. But we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you guys again. If you have any questions, like I mentioned, at Real Fan Report, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.
Peace.